In 1995, my mom went on a vacation to visit her best friend from high school. She left me and my oldest younger brother. I know that's a little confusing. Anyway, number 2 and number 1, because I'm number 1. So she left me and my only one of my other brothers was born at the time. She left us with my dad for the weekend. And now, the reason that I remember this trip is that for the last, however many years that is, 28, right? 28 years, I have heard my mom complain about a lesson that my dad taught me and Andrew while she was gone on that trip. One weekend, and my mom will still complain, that while she was gone, my dad taught Andrew and I the difference between doing something on accident and on purpose. The way that I assume this happened is that Andrew or I hurt the other one. We did something. We were rambunctious little boys. We have me on video pushing him down a little tight slide. It's on video. I'm caught red-handed. So the way that I assume this happened is that something happened between Andrew and I, and my dad, he didn't know any better. He said, "Well, did you do that on purpose?" And we went, "What does that mean?" See, my mom, to this point, had just taught us when you do something that hurts somebody or that somebody doesn't like, you just say sorry. Whether you do it on purpose or on accident, that doesn't really matter, does it? It doesn't really matter. It's certainly not, I was 5, maybe 4, I forget, I don't know what time in 1905 this happened. Andrew's 3, right? But what does a 3-year-old know about on purpose or on accident? And those of you who are parents like me know that the moment you teach your kids this, everything's on accident, right? I'm sorry, he accidentally walked into my fist. It wasn't my fault. Right? Like, once you teach this lesson, everything's an accident. There's no more on purpose. But this distinction's important, isn't it? This distinction between on accident and on purpose is important. In the legal system, it could be the difference between life in prison and 10 years in prison. Between time in jail and a warning. "I'm sorry, officer, I didn't see the stop sign," is very different than "I did not care that there was a stop sign there." Right? On purpose versus on accident matters. The words that played on the screen behind me, those words are the original purpose statement for Westwood Christian Church that were typed onto like some sheepskin paper and given to the city of Madison when we were incorporated in 1958. Now we've simplified our purpose statement, right? That was a lot of words. Imagine if somebody said, "What's your church about?" and you had to have that paragraph memorized every time you wanted to talk about Westwood. Today we talk a lot about our purpose is to bear witness to God. Much simpler, but I believe it encapsulates all of those things. And in fact, what we have done is we've taken that original purpose statement and the words that you saw across the bottom, those have become our core values. Our 5 core values. The values, those are the things that we want everyone who calls Westwood home. If you're a member here at Westwood Christian Church, we want those 5 things to be things that you value in your life. Evangelism, discipleship, service, unity, community. We want those to be things that you value, but we don't want them to be things that you value on accident. We don't want you to be like, wow, I was just talking to my neighbor and suddenly they told me they wanted to be baptized. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, yes, that is amazing. Praise God. But I would love for these values to be things that you value on purpose. Things that you're doing intentionally. The word intend means to stride towards, to work towards. I want them to be things that we care about as a church collective and as church members individually on purpose. To give you an example, it's an accident that today I'm preaching on the same text that Wayne taught in Sunday school downstairs. That's an accident. Happy accident, to use Bob Ross language, right? There are no mistakes, just happy accidents. Maybe that means that we really need something from this passage that I'm going to read today and preach from. But I want us to be a church that's doing things on purpose. So we're going to spend the next 5 weeks talking about these 5 values. We're going to talk about how we can be doing them on purpose, why we should do them on purpose, right? And we're going to talk about what they mean for each of us individually. So we're going to be in Mark chapter 5, verses 1 to 20, and today we're talking about evangelism. Talking about spreading the good news, okay? The word evangelism is just the Greek word euangelion, right? If you look at it in Greek, you might even go, that looks like the word evangelism, right? It's close enough that you can actually make it out. And that word in Greek just means to proclaim the good news. This is one of those times where Greek is awesome because they have one word that in English translates to 3 or 4. So we're going to talk today about how we on purpose spread the good news. Because it's my belief that everybody needs the good news. That's why it's good news. It's good news for everybody. So, in chapter 5, we pick up. They came to the other side of the sea, that's the Sea of Galilee, to the country of the Gerasenes. When he had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with chain. For he had often been restrained with shackles and chains, but the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke in pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains he was always howling, bruising himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now there on the hillside, a great herd of swine was feeding. And the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out, and they entered the swine, and the herd, numbering 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea, and were drowned in the sea. The swineherds ran off and told it in the city and in the country. People came to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the demoniac sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, and the very man who had the legion, and they were afraid. Those who had seen what had happened to the demoniac and to the swine reported it. Then they began to beg Jesus to leave the neighborhood. As he was getting into the boat, this is Jesus, the man who had been possessed by the demons begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus refused and said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy he has shown you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed. So we pick up at chapter 5 of Mark here. Jesus has he's done he's already exorcised one demon. He then does some teaching, and then he and his disciples get in a boat and they cross the Sea of Galilee. While they're on the Sea of Galilee, a storm blows in. This is really common on the Sea of Galilee. For those of you who don't know, Sea of Galilee is down by sea level, not quite, but pretty close. But the cliffs on the side are very high. And so it's really common for these windstorms to blow into the Sea of Galilee, and they don't escape. They can't blow over the other side. So we get these windstorms that come out of nowhere at a moment's notice, and storms rage. And Jesus, with a word, with a sentence, calms the storm. We were joking in Sunday school today, like, what did the disciples want him to do? Like, they wake him up, but like, what do they think he was going to do? It's one of those like, hey, look, I don't know what you're going to do, Jesus, but what you are doing, not helpful. Like, I do something helpful, because this, not it. We don't often think about this because we don't think this way. But to the Jewish mind, to the people who lived in this region, the ocean, the open waters, the depths were considered to be the home of chaos and evil. This is why in Revelation chapter, I think 16 or 20, it's one of those two, there's a sea of glass. It has been calmed. Chaos has been subdued. So you see, when Jesus calms a storm, he is calming chaos. He is speaking power over creation. And in some ways, he's calming corruption. This is why the disciples are like, yo, we didn't know what we expected you to do, but that wasn't it. like that wasn't what we expected. We're glad you did. Don't get us wrong, but we're terrified now. And then Jesus gets to the other side of this Sea of Galilee, into this region that we know as the Decapolis. Deca meaning 10, polis meaning city. There are 10 Greek cities in this region. They live kind of close together. They're kind of a loose confederation, so they go by one name, the Decapolis. And when he gets there, there's this man who's apparently living in a cemetery who is demon-possessed. He's not just demon-possessed, though. He's possessed by lots of demons. So many demons that he's got like superhuman strength. This man could apparently win Mr. Universe. He's so ripped. He's breaking chains. Shackles cannot bind him. He cannot be subdued. The man runs up to Jesus. He apparently recognizes something about Jesus. He knows that there's something important about Jesus, and he refers to him by a name that we don't see anywhere else in the Gospels. Son of the Most High God. This man has no way of knowing that on his own. He's a Greek. He's never even heard Jesus preach before. The demons inside of him recognize Jesus' eternal identity. And they speak to him in fear. And Jesus says, "What's your name?" And the guy goes, "I'm Legion." If you've ever seen The Exorcist, I imagine that I'm Legion, right? Because that's how the demon always speaks in that movie, right? That's how we know when the girl's speaking because she's sweet and lovely and the demons are like the angriest voice you've ever heard, right? That's what I imagined. A cacophony of those. See, the word legion is a military term for the Roman army. A legionnaire in a Roman army is a soldier out of 5,000. 5,000 to 6,000 soldiers formed a legion. Now, I'm not saying there were 6,000 demons in this man, because we know that this kind of becomes like an idiom for lots and lots, right? So if you said, hey, how many hairs are on your head? You might say a legion's worth. Right? You haven't counted, probably. Roy likes to say it's easier for some of us to count our hairs than others, but you know. So it's an idiom. It means a lot. It means a lot. So many that a swineherd of 2,000 pigs can be possessed. This is a lot of demons inside this person. So Jesus allows them to go into the pigs. That's how we know this is a Greek region, by the way. If this was a Jewish region, there'd be no pigs, because that's not kosher. So that he sends them into the pigs, and the pigs run themselves into the ocean, or into the Sea of Galilee. Which I'll remind you, is kind of the understanding that's where demons live anyway. They're going home, and they're taking barbecue with them. Reminds me of the story of Israel being set free from the Exodus, where they're on a shore. Moses puts his arm down, and the Red Sea closes in around the armies of the Egyptians. Jesus is showing these people who's got power over chaos and oppression. In fact, I think that even when Mark tells us that this man could not be bound, I think he wants us to remember something that Jesus said just a chapter or two earlier. In chapter 3, this is what Jesus says. He says, "No one can enter a strong man's house and plunder his property without first tying up the strong man. Then indeed the house can be plundered." Now, in Mark chapter 3, Jesus is talking about Satan. He says, look, I am not demon-possessed, because they think he's demon-possessed, right? He's exorcised the demon. They're like, man, this guy must be demon-possessed too. He and that demon are friends, and that's how that happened. And Jesus is like, you all make no sense. I am not a demon. I am not demon-possessed. In fact, I am the one who has come to subdue the king of demons. I have come to subdue the strong man, Satan. And once I subdue Satan, guess what I get to do? I get to go into his house and walk out with anything I want, because he can't stop me. And what is Satan's domain? Death, hell. Jesus is saying, I can rescue people from hell because I can tie up the strong man, and he cannot break my chains. You see, here in Mark chapter 5, we have a strong man who cannot be bound. And how does Jesus act? It's interesting, right? Jesus doesn't go, I have better chains than you all, right? Like, he doesn't go, I'm going to make these chains strong, and we're going to tie this guy up and leave him in the tombs. He sets him free from the thing that is oppressing him. He sets him free from the thing which is keeping him back. He sets him free from the reason that he has no community. His neighbors are terrified. They have tried to tie him up in the cemetery. Like, look, man, we want you over there with just dead people, so that's all we have to worry about. They've ostracized this man. He's terrified. Don't send me away. I have no friends anyway. He says, get out. Get out of this man. I am the Son of the Most High God, he says. You will listen to me. I have power over all of you. I think this story is important because it shows that Jesus is like super powerful. Right? So in the first, in chapter 3, he casts one demon out of a kid. They're like, wow, that's kind of weird. This guy must be demon possessed. And Jesus is like, you don't understand. And then he tells some stories, some parables. And then he crosses the Sea of Galilee, and he says, look, I have power over all creation. I can make the wind stop blowing. Like, we still don't really understand wind. And Jesus can make it stop. And then he comes to a man with thousands of demons inside of him. And he says, I'm not just powerful over one demon. I'm powerful over all of them. And the people here are terrified. Gerasa, where we're told this story takes place, it has actually been destroyed by Rome about 100 years before Jesus gets here. It has been ransacked, salted. I mean, it took them 100 years to build this city back up. They're terrified that when they hear about this guy who's got this power, that Rome's going to come in and be like, look, y'all, we told you once, don't do this. So Jesus says, okay, I'll leave. I won't cause you any problems. That's fine, I'll leave. And the man, the demoniac, says, well, can I come with you? Jesus says, no. Jesus refused him, we're told. Like, that's strong language. But why does Jesus refuse him? Because in his refusal, Jesus gives him a mission. He gives him something to do. He says, go home, that place you haven't been in who knows how long, go home to your own people. Which is important, right? Because if he comes with Jesus, who's he going to? Not his people. This man's probably Greek himself. He's not a Jew. He's not going to know what to do in Israel. Like, if he comes across, he's like, wait, you all don't eat bacon? That was my favorite thing. He's not going to know what to do. So Jesus says, go home to your own people and tell them what the Lord has done for you. This man is effectively the first missionary to these Gentiles. He's the first person they're ever going to hear proclaim the good news of Jesus. He's the first person who's ever been shown mercy by the Lord in this region. And Jesus says, now that you have experienced being set free, go tell all your friends. Go tell them what I've done. Go tell them what God has shown you. Go tell them about mercy. Because your testimony is one of the most powerful things God can give you. I find a lot of encouragement in this passage. As a minister, there are times where I feel guilty. I came back to Wisconsin to be a minister. I grew up here. It's like, am I supposed to be overseas? Am I supposed to be like in the Amazon? Am I supposed to be in some unreached people group? Am I supposed to? I don't think so. I feel like my calling was here. Was home. Go home to your own people and tell them what God has done for you. Tell them of the mercy that God has shown you. You see, in this way, Jesus has commissioned all of us. Oftentimes when we talk about evangelism, the thought that maybe comes to your head is like, man, do I have to go stand on a street corner at the Capitol? Do I have to go to somebody who like I've never met before? Do I need to go blank? And Jesus says, no, just start at home. Like, go to your neighbors. Do your neighbors know that you go to church? Do they know that you believe in God? Do they know that you believe that Jesus is the resurrected Lord of all creation? Do they know that you believe that Jesus is the Son of the Most High God and that He has power? Step one is go home to your own people and tell them what the Lord has done for you. Has there been a time where, Robert prayed about financial instability? Has there been a time in your life where money looked tight and suddenly, like Elisha's jar, there was money at the bottom of your bank account? Was your marriage on the rocks and suddenly, through God's power, there was reconciliation? Were you going through something in life where you weren't sure how you were going to get out, but through the power of God, through the love of God, through the grace of God, you went, oh wow, I can get through this? Were you sick and you thought, I might die? Lord, help me. And He did. Go tell your friends what God has done. Go tell your own people what God has done for you. Go tell. Go and tell. Jesus invites us to do the same on purpose. Okay, on purpose. This is the simple, right? How do we do this on purpose? How do we tell the good news on purpose? We tell people what God has done for us. Sometimes we get so worried about, okay, I don't understand, why did Jesus have to die? Or why did that matter for me? Or how did sin have this? Or what, we get so worried about these massive theological issues, and Jesus says, don't worry, take a step back and just go tell people what God has done for you. Go bear witness to what God has done for you. Tell your friends, your colleagues. If the person whose cubicle is next to yours doesn't know that you go to church, talk about that at some point. For our high school kids, if you're at school, do your friends know that you go to church? Do you invite them to come with you? Come hear about this God who's done things for me. Our invitation is to go and tell. Let me say too, the invitation is that if you're still like, hey, I'm feeling pretty oppressed by something, whatever it is, will you let Jesus unbind you? I would love to talk with you about taking the next step of faith in Jesus. I would love to talk with you about, Adam, I feel like I'm dealing with this thing and I don't know where God is in the midst of it. Or I feel like God is inviting me to do something, to follow him in some way. I feel like God is inviting me to shoulder this pain, but I don't know how to do it. That is why I'm in ministry. Because I want to help you. I want to talk to you. I want to pray with you. I want to bear witness to what God is doing to you and through you and with you. So what has God done for you that you can tell people about? One of my very good friends, his name is Matt, and just so you know, I asked for permission before I tell this story, so Matt, thank you. I was Matt's RA when he was a freshman at college. Matt and I became good friends, and we have stayed friends since we both left college. 7 years ago, Matt tried to end his life. He tried to end his life through suicide. It didn't work. And every year, on the anniversary of that day, Matt posts a picture on Facebook of him in a hospital room, hooked up to I don't know how many things, feeding tube, breathing tube. If there's a tube that you can imagine, he's on it. And every year, he posts that picture and says, it's the anniversary of the day where I thought life was hopeless, where I thought life was so meaningless that I tried to end it all. I tried, it didn't work, and I am here to tell you, this is him, I'm here to tell you that God has done so much in me in that time. He goes on every year, and he'll talk about it more than that, but every year he takes the opportunity to say, today's the anniversary of the day where I thought I was hopeless and useless and worthless, and I tried to end my life, but it didn't work, and since then, God has done amazing things in my life. And every year he goes on to say, I don't care if you think I'm talking about God too much, because nothing has made my life better than God in the last X number of years. It's like the same thing every year, and I love it. In fact, this year he said, hey, I'm sorry if I get too preachy about this every year. And I just quoted, my comment was just Mark 5:19. No. Go to your people and tell them what God has done for you. That's the invitation. How do we evangelize? How do we spread the good news? How do we proclaim the good news? It begins with what God has done in our lives. Now hear me say, we don't all have a story like Matt. Right? We don't all have that kind of story. But it's my belief that God is always working, so that means that you have a story. There's something in your story that you can point to and say, that was God. Let me tell you about how much mercy I've been shown. I want us to be a people on purpose who celebrate the beautiful work of God, who sets us free from sin and death, who sets us free from the things that hold us back day in and day out. Let's pray. God, I thank you for Jesus, whose love is amazing and shines through our darkest hours. God, I pray that we would be people on purpose who spread the good news, who tell people about all you've done for us. God, for those of us who struggle to think about where you are in our lives, I pray that you would first show us where you have been active. I pray that you would show us the work that you have done. I pray that you would show us the power that has been at work in our lives. God, then I pray that you would give us the boldness to go tell people, to tell our people what you have done. We thank you for the mercy you've shown us. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.